let's roll. So whenever you're ready.
Well, I remember early on doing a gig with you at Bar Broadway in like 2000, like ages ago now, and that was with Explanatory. And I think you started that in 1998. When you did start that band, which I think had members of Hermitude in it as well, and what was the idea behind putting that band together, and what did you eventually want to kind of contribute and communicate with your music? Why music particularly?
I've always liked writing. That's really what I've always been about, and I didn't have any expectations whatsoever. In fact, the very act or achievement of being on stage was a means to an end. And that was an end in itself. It was just something that we felt like pushing, stretching our license as far as we could possibly do it. There was no grand plans, there was no delusions. I didn't sort of think or compare myself or try and have any aims. I didn't have goals, I didn't have 5-year plans. I felt quite fraudulent in that I was surrounded with some good people, musically mainly, not necessarily vocally. And I thought I would ride that train as long as it would take me, and then, you know, find something else.
And at that stage, were you thinking, because I mean, obviously, and this is a subject that's been done to death in interviews with you before, so I'm going to touch on it, I won't constantly berate you about it, but were there social concerns that were fueling your music at that point, or was it really just to explore the new trend that had sort of started in Australia with hip-hop, and kind of you were really basically a pioneering influence of, and just for the fun of it, really? Yeah,
for the fun of it. I grew up on hip-hop. Hip-hop was very influential for me, and the hip-hop that I grew up on, while some of it wasn't completely political, the really successful stuff was. The stuff that got most coverage, the stuff that would reach our shores and there wasn't too much of it. Public Enemy, Ghetto Boys, NWA, Run DMC, Tribe Called Quest. So some of them are more political than others, Paris. But the really successful artists like Public Enemy, they were, you know, unapologetically political. They were very strong in their stances, sometimes very challenging for a little white kid from the Blue Mountains. And so that really informed me and educated me in a way that I wasn't receiving from school. So it always seemed to be that it was a natural thing, and it also opened up my eyes to what I felt was important and made me think about things that were more localized, but in a similar context. So still similar issues, but in a local context. And so whenever I wrote, it was always a very big part of what I did. It was always a big part of why I wanted to write in the first place. So yeah, the social issues have never really, it hasn't changed. And when I first began, it just seemed like, well, I'm writing a song. Well, you know, some of it's going to be about this sort of stuff. And in fact, with Explanatory, the collaborative songs weren't so political because I couldn't align myself with the other vocalists. I couldn't make them talk about stuff that I was concerned about.
It's interesting because we've never really talked about the first things you're listening to, but when you say Public Enemy, which is, for people our age, you know, a very big band. I mean, I remember that too. I think Fear of a Black Planet, and that period of time was, I think that was the first hip-hop record I got, and I stole off my friend Sam. So I remember, you know, it was going around, people were passing those records around. And it's interesting to think that the consciousness of race relations came from something that was quite like an oppositional viewpoint. Although there's obviously no opposition in the actual process of talking about those things, but it's from the black community in America to then inform, like, you know, the community of Anglo rappers here to then talk about race relations in Australia is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be a limitation with what you can do, but it doesn't change the instinctive drive that you have, and it doesn't change what you feel compelled to do, even if it's perhaps inappropriate for a white person to talk about race relations. Well, I think I've gone through periods where I felt it's really inappropriate, and I felt like you can't really expect to achieve any outcomes from it. But yeah, I've changed my mind on that too. I do think that any meaningful two-way relationship has to be that, and two-way, and I do get that. And I think a lot of people have a very narrow view of hip-hop because of its origin, and also because of the stereotype of white people stealing black culture, and that's really serious. Black culture has been so rich and so influential and so interesting because of the background and the history and the kind of struggle that has informed it and created the kind of understanding that people who have endured that struggle have with each other and are able to express, and then white people come along and just say, hey, this works, I like this stuff, yeah. Yeah, and all the white people get down with it. Like, Eminem is undisputed as one of the best rappers in the world, and one of the best of all times, let's be fair, but at the same time, he readily acknowledges the fact that it's the fact that he's white that has made him so successful, because sometimes the best rappers, I think, you know, we associate the best rappers with also the most commercially viable. Yeah. So he's naturally there, but the success that he's had, he's quite open about saying that it's because he's white that it has been astronomical, as opposed to just really, you know, huge.
So backing out of the political stuff, the solo career is a very different beast, and it seems like the records have a lot of nuance in the production and in the writing. It's a much more personal exercise, and there's a real collision of style going on in the writing from the start, from like No Rider to even, you know, lately Hillsong and stuff, and the Signal as well. There's so much stuff going on that record. What inspired you to start doing those things, and how do you feel things have changed throughout the process of recording those solo albums?
I think with any collaboration, the more people that get involved, the more complicated and exhausting it is. And I think there's pluses and minuses to it, and the solo record is really, I always thought it was an opportunity not to delve with the same themes as The Herd, but, and it is in a lot of ways. Like I deliberately try and write about different things. I don't want to recreate the other band, but the music, the producers that I work with are so different to the producers in The Herd that it's always going to be sounding quite different. But I think, yeah, nowadays it's just about, you know, having the freedom after many years to be able to just sort of be a bit more indulgent and work on my own ideas.
In my opinion, you're kind of the leading hip-hop vocalist in Australia, and have maintained that standard over the course of those 3 records. Well, it is the truth. What drives you to write, and what's it like to be in a position whereby you're looking around an industry which is still fairly small in Australia, but very passionate, and you're also managing and running a label that is responsible for the majority of the artists that people would look to in that sphere of music as being good? How do you keep that standard when so much of that is in your hands? I mean, you know, it is your label. It's you know, it's your solo career. It's, you know, you're working with artists like The Tongue and Hermitude who are seen as the top of their own games in that sense as well. How do you keep a standard consistent? It's very difficult to do that in music.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I was always influenced by my brother, who forced me into listening to people like Leonard Cohen and a lot of Britpop, a lot of Blur and Primal Scream and Pulp, all that sort of stuff. And so I think I've always just got a different take on the way I write my music. I think there's a lot of better rappers out there than me, but I feel that I probably write music that's going to work in Australia a little bit better than some of my peers, just because I'm really obsessed with melody, and I kind of have a sense of how good like songwriters write. Not necessarily that I write those good melodies, but that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, sure. As far as keeping the standard up there, I think we're in a greater position than ever because we don't sign too many artists. So the artists that we do, we kind of have a bit more luxury with it. But yeah, I don't know about the leading thing. Although you know, it's nice to hear that. I think if with anything, if you surround yourself with people who are doing good things, you generally develop a really healthy competitive environment where you hopefully will have that support and that support network and the ability to share and collaborate, but you don't get too stagnant.
Yeah, everyone wants to do something better than the thing that...
you sold out this venue. Oh, jeez, okay. and it is a motivating factor, you know. It's not necessarily unhealthy to do that. The single most difficult and challenging part of my job is separating managing and myself and my own goals as an artist. My own goals as an artist and my own career has always been by far the most important thing, but I prioritize it when I'm releasing and touring. You know, I'm thinking about what I'm doing, but I'm always also thinking about everybody else. And there are some times where, to be a good manager, you have to wholeheartedly be in there for your artists. Yeah. And every manager is going to have some sort of impediment or something that is going to get in the way, whether it be their commitment to another group that they manage or whatever the hell. There's just, you know, so many different things that can get in the way. And for me, it is being an artist. And I've found that over the last year, it's been I can see different ways that some of our artists can go really well. And that, for me as an artist, is something that I have to take my artist hat off and my goals and aspirations and just be like, okay, this is your time and we're going to completely work on you. And that, personally, that's a very difficult thing for me to overcome. But it's not. Yeah, but it's not impossible. It's actually, it's more of a growth thing, a personal growth thing. And I'm still learning stuff like that, and I find it's difficult to go through, but it's great to come out the other side of.
But applying that kind of humility to your work can only result, it's a personal sacrifice, and I think it can only result in good things.
Yeah.
It's just, it's tough. That's adult talk. That's real talk.
Yeah.
Quote R. Kelly.
Yeah, fully. It's real talk, for sure. But at the same time, it's fundamental to the kind of situation that I'm in that we're an artist-run label. And we have backed our artists since scratch, quite most of them. And we don't have the same commissions that most managers charge. We give them all these different, you know, we give them the resources to be able to do what they do. We're so different to a lot of management, but it doesn't mean that we're the best managers. And that's where that's where we're, you know, just growing all the time, yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems like things are at a healthy spot.
Yeah.
It's what some might have called a crazy idea. It's certainly matured into something that you can see, you know, anytime you open a magazine and someone's touring or whatever.
Yep.
I guess we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks so much.
Hey man, cool. No worries.